Welcome into another edition of Carps Corner. Been love catching up with you guys and bringing all the NFL news and notes, sports topics, a lot of things that are going on. And I'd love to get into even more college basketball with everything and a lot of other sports. The problem is the NFL has just found a way to continue to dominate the news cycle outside of when there's live games on. We got Thursday night, Friday night, Sweet 16, Elite 8, Saturday and Sunday. And so that's going to give you a little bit going into this weekend. But just when you think the NFL wheel is going to stop spinning and all of a sudden things will relax, boom, another blockbuster trade happens. There's more news out from the Deshaun Watson criminal case, which, a lot of people publicly didn't know about, but I'll break down some of the details of probably how the Browns looked at this and if their due diligence, if they knew. Pro days are happening. Going to do a full Ohio State pro day recap with what I thought there. It won't be something too long, and I'll do that in a separate episode so that we'll be able to sit down and really dedicate the time to that. But you wanted to start with this landmark deal. Miami Dolphins trading a 1, 2, couple of 4s, and or actually a couple of 4s and a 6, all the way down to the Kansas City Chiefs in exchange for Tyreek Hill. And so we probably should have seen this coming. In fact, the Tyreek Hill was alluding to wanting a new deal. He's been a really good receiver, 6-time Pro Bowler, all pro. He's really benefited a lot from Pat Mahomes, and Pat Mahomes just the same has benefited from him. In fact, he's got great speed. It's tough to stay up with him down the field. And Pat Mahomes does a great job of buying time, and he's got an incredibly strong arm, can throw off any platform and just throws it down there. And his famous line is like, screw it. Tyreek's down there, and finding him down the field for some of those big explosive plays that we've become so accustomed to seeing. But I mean, let's face it right now, the Chiefs, and I've alluded to this before, they're a little bit in, kind of a retool. It's not a rebuild, but they've revamped their offensive line last year. They'll try to improve that. And all of a sudden, defensively now, they're starting to have to make some decisions. They had to, let Tyrann Mathieu essentially walk. Frank Clark, they did end up getting him restructured. They're very talented defensive end that they made the trade for with Seattle a number of years back. He gets 2 years, $29 million, but they had to restructure him to keep him there underneath the salary cap. They gave Chris Jones the big deal, but they're starting now, with the trading of Tyreek Hill to understand like, hey, we can pay guys, and if you're really good, we're going to pay to keep you here. I thought Tyreek Hill was going to be one of those guys that was in the long-term plans for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs believe that. Problem is that, Andy Reid and Veach, they sit down and they're starting to do the math to look at this, and Tyreek Hill wanted just an astronomical sum of money. He wanted to be the highest paid receiver in the NFL. And not the fact that he's maybe not worth it. You can make a good argument with his productivity. Like I said, he benefits from Pat Mahomes, but in the symbiotic relationship, Pat Mahomes benefits from him. You want Devontae Adams money. And, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs, they looked at this and realized, hey, we're a really good team. Tyreek Hill is a really good player. We have what we believe is the best quarterback in the game. We've got, an offensive line we've improved. We've got some good weapons. We still have Travis Kelce, which, in probably 3 years, they'll be forced to make a decision, 2-3 years about him, maybe start making some pay cuts, assuming he's not playing at the level he is now. And he's in his getting in his 30s. So that makes sense. And so you go through these iterations, and this is what's going to happen with Pat Mahomes. It happened with Tom Brady. And you look at his kind of Super Bowl run. He had the first 3, and then he had the middle 2 that he went to with, that Moss Welker team. And then ultimately his last 3, which was retooled up and kind of built a little bit more around defense again, and a little bit more of a running game and some other things. And so they had those kind of 3 iterations because quarterbacks, they've got the ability to play forever and play at a high level for a long time. The rest of us mere mortal players, occasionally, you have the Jerry Rice, Reggie White, guys who can seemingly play at an incredibly high level, deep into their 30s at a skill position. It's really tough to do that, though. You start to lose your speed. You can't keep weight on like the way you used to. Your body starts breaking down. and you just kind of become a shell of yourselves. You see it happen quickly at running backs, but even at receivers, wide receiver guys begin to lose a little bit of a step. You're seeing that, Julio Jones, AJ Green, those guys were once incredibly dominant, and now they're still really good receivers, but are they those elite guys? They've been replaced by Devontae Adams, the Cooper Kupps, the Tyreek Hills, guys like that who have now been more productive. And so this is what happens. And the Chiefs are trying to continue to do what the Patriots did and were able to do for 20 years with Tom Brady and continue to retool. And so now they're shedding Tyreek Hill. They're shedding his salary. And so they have those dollars now to allocate other places. They also have to try to reproduce that production. So how do you ultimately do that? How do you reproduce the production of Tyreek Hill? You can't do it with one guy. If you could, they'd be drafting that guy or someone would be signing him. You look around, you think, okay, Odell Beckham Jr. is out there. He's hurt, got hurt in the Super Bowl. When will he be ready? When would he be available? I would say it wouldn't even matter before. You're the Chiefs, you're going to make the playoffs, you'll win the division. Broncos are a lot better. You look at the Chargers, they're going to be coming for you. Mike Williams re-signed. Herbert's only going to get better. Adding Khalil Mack, they're a better team. And then ultimately the Raiders, adding Devontae Adams, they're a better team. Derek Carr's got his college weapon back. And so you got to be careful with how you do it because you want to make sure Odell Beckham Jr., this would probably be the best situation for him to go and succeed in and be able to put up big numbers and ultimately get a nice deal and maybe get a nice deal with the Kansas City Chiefs because I'm sure he's going to like playing with Pat Mahomes. Now, he wanted to be in LA, wanted to be in a flashy place, but listen, you're getting a heck of a lot of primetime games playing with the Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes. So there's that option. And then I think you ultimately need to go to the draft. And there's a bunch of receivers out there right now that you could ultimately be looking at. The guys from Ohio State, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, both are really talented. I doubt Wilson will be there. Maybe Olave would potentially be there. Drake London, the speedster out of USC, he could potentially be there. But the guy I think who would be there towards the end of the first round for him is Jameson Williams. Now, problem is he tore his ACL too. And so, his was earlier. I don't think quite as bad, and he's younger. So he should be able to come back and be better equipped to start earlier in the season than potentially Odell Beckham Jr. But you're going to have to try to piece some of that thing together. You have a lot of money, so that's nice to be able to do that. Maybe you sign Odell Beckham Jr. to kind of a incentive-laden deal and a prove-it deal, move it. Maybe you play 8 games for us. If you play well, we'll work on that, and we'll work on that extension. And then Jameson Williams could be kind of your longer-term solution to Tyreek Hill. He gives you a lot of those things that Tyreek Hill did. He's not the most polished route runner in the world, but neither was Tyreek Hill. He's a guy that relied on his speed, his strength, and his raw athleticism. He got better, but he never had the greatest hands either. He would drop some balls every now and then. He's a body catcher. He could get deep on guys. Jameson Williams, JMO as we'll call him, he was able to do that at Ohio State. You saw him do it last year at Alabama. He possesses a lot of those rare traits to where it's perfect for him. If you see Pat Mahomes buying time in the pocket, moving around, Jameson Williams, hey, go deep. You can outrun guys. They're going to have a hard time keeping up with you. So he ultimately would check that box and check it in a really big way. And I think that would be able for the Chiefs to kind of keep some of that same explosive nature that they've had. And then you have more of the polished guy with great hands in Odell Beckham Jr., who's getting a little older, but still, as we saw last year, when Odell Beckham Jr. was paired up with Matt Stafford, how good he could ultimately be. However, coming off another big knee injury, could there be any slippage? He's a competitor. He works really hard. He grinds to get back. Father Time is very cruel to players. He's not your friend, but with the way he works and with how medicine is now, you would think you would still be able to get some good production from him this season. And ultimately as well, hopefully down the line, be able to do that too. The other side of that trade, Miami Dolphins. They're giving up 1, 2, a couple 2s, some 4s, 6, giving up a ton of picks. They're pairing Tyreek Hill down there. The Jalen Waddle, you got Gesicki at tight end, really good young player. Devontae Parker's still there. Brought in Chase Edmonds, revamping and shoring up that offensive line. And they have a pretty solid defensive unit intact that was good from the year before with Brian Flores. So this Miami Dolphins team has everything you need now, except a question at quarterback. How good is Tua Tagovailoa? That's the question the Miami Dolphins have been asking. He's been efficient at times. They were able to win some games down the stretch last year with him. That wasn't necessarily he was making a ton of plays, but he did show some promise. Let's remember, he obviously had the huge hip injury that he was coming into the league with, so that probably slowed and stunted his growth. But what the Miami Dolphins have done is they have insulated Tua with great talent on the perimeter, lots of speed. They've given him a good offensive line, solid running backs, and a good defense. And let's face it, you're playing the Jets. They're not great. Patriots, they're going to continue to improve. We'll see what Mac Jones becomes. And then you have the Bills. But it's not the strongest division in the world. Outside of Buffalo, you probably feel like your roster is as competitive as anybody else's. And this is going to be the test for Tua. They're going to see through the first 8 or 9 games, maybe through the first 6, what he's able to do with all of this talent. And as a backup policy, as insurance, they brought in Teddy Bridgewater. A lot of people looked at Teddy B, bringing him in there. Hey, he's a veteran guy. He's a Miami guy. He can help teach. He can help tutor to it. Yeah, he can do all of those things. Teddy Bridgewater is also a competitor. Pretty good athlete. Really accurate passer. Not the strongest arm in the world. But if you put him in there with that talent, I think Teddy Bridgewater gets this team to the playoffs. Now, I don't know if he's your long-term answer, but if Tua is not it, he can get you to playoffs this year, and then you still have a ton of draft capital next year that you could go get a Bryce Young. You could go get a Bryce Young. You get a CJ Stroud, someone like that, possibly in the draft when next year's quarterback draft is going to be stronger. I think that's the Miami Dolphins playbook. Play it out with Tua this year. Hopefully he's your answer. He's the guy. Waddle, Hill, Gesicki, Parker, good O-line, solid defense, Chase Edmonds, good running backs, have everything. If he can't get it done through 6-7 games and you're struggling, boom, we pivot immediately to Teddy Bridgewater. He can take you the rest of the way and get you to the playoffs. I don't know if he's an over the hump guy, but you still have a couple of first rounders. You have good draft capital next year to be able to find that answer. I think that's the Miami Dolphins playbook right now. And this is how crazy the NFL is, that we're going to load it up. We're going to see what we can get with our quarterback, who we think is the guy. If he's not, oh well, wash our hands of him. We're going to move on, and we're going to go try to get somebody else. Maybe there's even someone in free agency that's available next year that we could go find and pull out and have some success if we don't want to ride with a rookie. But you have a young team if you're Miami and you're ready to go and beginning to get better. Because the one thing you don't want to have happen is go 4 years down the road, guarantee a 5th-year option, and then ultimately you're put in the Cleveland Browns scenario. Now, Cleveland Browns just brought in Deshaun Watson, and we'll get to that in a moment with his case. But I want to focus on Baker Mayfield, and with that a little bit, Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't believe there's really much of a market for Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm talking to some of the guys at Ohio State's Pro Day this week. I know Andrew Berry's been hitting the phones. I don't really think that really anybody's picking up because they don't want to guarantee the $18, $19 million, and they really don't want to give back anything of value. Hey, if we're going to trade for him, you're going to eat 2/3 of that contract. We'll give you a 6th-round pick. And so the Browns are just trying to shed some of that salary, but I don't think there's really a market for Baker. You look at all the spots that have been filled. Houston, if they wanted him, they would have put him in the trade. Seattle, I don't think is calling. Panthers, I don't think that they're really interested. And so you look around like, he's going to go to Pittsburgh and compete. I don't think the Browns would want to have that happen. And I ultimately think that I don't know if the Steelers would be all that interested, but there just doesn't seem like any logical landing spots. Like there's any real fits. Atlanta, they just signed Mariota. Maybe you could go down and compete in New Orleans go down and compete in New Orleans and be able to get that done with Jameson. But I don't think anybody's going to pay him big bucks and anybody's going to try to bring him in and give up significant draft capital. And I honestly thought Jimmy G would be the logical answer, that teams would be able to pursue him. But he's coming off shoulder surgery. He's far more consistent than Baker has been, but he still has that injury hanging over him. He's a little bit older. And could he be your answer long-term? Well, we don't necessarily know if that's ultimately going to be the case. So this begs the question, why did Baker play last year? He had the shoulder injury. Obviously, that bothered him. He didn't play to the level that he had hoped. there were some struggles with how he was able to perform. But why did he go out there? Well, let's remember this. He got his 5th-year option guaranteed. And with that, he didn't have his extension. And so I believe Baker went out there, number one, he's playing for his extension. He probably thought he could go out there and play well enough, get the Browns to the playoff. People would rally around him. And in doing so, they'd be able to negotiate something this offseason or maybe even during last year. And that would help get it done. And the Browns would believe in him. The city would be on board and everything would be all hunky-dory. Another reason, I think, honestly, he's a leader of the Browns and he wanted to go out and lead the team, and the Browns doctors signed off on it. And hey, you're our guy. We're going to see what you can ultimately do. I don't believe that they thought Baker would play as bad as he did. They'd probably see a lot more of him in 2020 than what they saw of him in the 2021 version. But you're the leader. Go out there and lead us to the playoffs. We want you to be our guy. Understanding that this front office didn't ultimately draft Baker, but they don't necessarily want to go out there and also spend draft capital and possibly pay a huge salary to bring in someone in free agency. They'd rather pay their own guy who they drafted number 1 overall. And that makes a lot of sense. And then lastly, Baker, I do believe this. He's a tough underdog guy. I talked about the leadership playing for the contract, but I do believe this, that Baker really enjoyed the city of Cleveland and he wanted to embrace that underdog story. The fact that he was a walk-on, transferred from Texas Tech to Oklahoma, ultimately became a Heisman Trophy winner, goes to Cleveland. But the Great Lakes region, man, Detroit, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, it's about toughness. And the city's tough. And they want a quarterback. They want a leader that they can embrace and understand is going to be as tough as they are. And I felt like Baker was going out there ultimately trying to prove that and trying to say, hey, this is something that you guys are tough. I'm your guy. And that's why there's so many people that I do believe still really like him and care about him in Cleveland. And he was endearing to the city because he embraced all of those things. So, you look at that. That's why I think the Browns let him play last year. That's why I think he ultimately went out and played last year. And now lastly, Deshaun Watson. He was cleared in his first grand jury hearing. No charges were going to be brought. There was still a civil case, and we knew about that. The Browns knew about it. The whole NFL knew about it. Browns said they did their due diligence. And I believe the other teams, 5 or 6 other teams in the running, they did as well. All of a sudden, it comes to light that there's another grand jury testimony that's happening in a grand jury trial that is happening in another county outside of Houston in the state of Texas. And so everybody puts their ears up now. What's going to happen? How crazy is this? I guarantee you this. The Cleveland Browns knew about this. The whole NFL knew about it. Every other team that was pursuing him knew about this. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to, obviously, that he's going to get acquitted and found that no charges could be brought with him. And they're going to be able to cross the hurdle of that lowest threshold to even be able to bring charges. If you read the details of the case, they're disturbing. I don't want to necessarily dive into all of it, but you're talking about, obviously, the massage therapist there and some inappropriate touching, fluids being exchanged, all kinds of things that aren't necessarily a great thing. Does it make it true? No. But it is very serious. And the fact that a lot of that has been out and been read and been rehashed again doesn't necessarily bode well for Deshaun Watson in the court of public opinion. But I guarantee you the Cleveland Browns knew about this. The NFL knew, and all of the other teams, they were not in denial about the fact that, hey, Deshaun Watson got cleared. Oh, all of a sudden, poof, all of a sudden this other charges were trumped up and we had no idea they were there. They knew about it. They had done the research and they were very aware of the situation. So that is all for this edition of Carps Corner. I'm going to bring you another one here very soon. Recap of everything that had been happening at Ohio State on their pro day, winners, losers, who all was there, what players look like, in my personal evaluation, and how important this pro day was to some of these different players near the top. So thank you for tuning in to this edition of Carps Corner. We'll see you again soon.